All right, let's see how long I can keep Barry's attention for right now. Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about rose-breasted cockatoos, what it's like to own them as a pet, all the costs that go into it, all the things that go into caring for a rose-breasted cockatoo, and basically, just what you can expect if you're thinking about getting one. So if you live in America, the very first thing that you can expect is that every other Australian will tell you that is not a cockatoo, it is a Galah. So these are in America called rose-breasted cockatoos. However, where they are originally from in Australia, they are called Galahs, and they're typically not referred to as a cockatoo. But they are in the cockatoo family, so that does make them a cockatoo, does make them a parrot, and here they're called a rose-breasted cockatoo. So it is an accurate name. I think they're also called a few other things. I don't really remember at the moment, but they can all be accurate names, so that's one thing to say about it. Another thing is that there's a common misconception that you can tell what the bird is by the eye color, and what I mean by that is it male or female? Come here. Now that is not accurate. They say, it's based on the eye color, how dark the iris is. That is not at all accurate, so you can't tell if it's a boy or a girl by that. The only way that you can tell is if it is DNA tested, or if you have other evidence, such as, they're producing babies, then I guess you have a boy and a girl, right? So now that those two things are out of the way, let's move on to the important things. Rose-breasted cockatoos are a very expensive bird to purchase. Here in the United States, they're not very common, and you would have a very hard time finding one in a rescue. Of course, it does happen every once in a while, and I have seen people rescue these birds, and they adopted them, that's how they got them. But typically, that's not how you're going to get it, especially if you are after this bird in particular. Then it's, best to go with a breeder and, someone that will help you through the process and understanding the bird that you're getting. The other thing, too, that I like to talk about is I am all for adoption and for rescuing animals. However, adopting a parrot is not like adopting a dog or a cat. Usually by that time they have a lot of health issues, a lot of behavioral issues, and parrots can be difficult to deal with. So rescuing one might not be a good idea. Just because it does take somebody very experienced in order to deal with all of the issues that the bird could come with. This can be so challenging that if it's somebody who is not familiar with parrots, they can easily become overwhelmed, and then the bird just gets rehomed again, and that doesn't help anybody. That just makes it worse on the bird, causes more issues for the bird. So that's why I think that, thinking about adopting a parrot is something that you really, really need to think about, and also think about how well you would be able to care for a rescued parrot, because they are going to be a lot more demanding than a parrot that you get at a young age that you're able to bond with. So here in the United States, these are not very common, and they can go up to, thousands of dollars in order to purchase one from a breeder. When deciding if I was going to get a rose-breasted cockatoo, it was a huge, huge decision, and it took me a while to decide if I was going to be able to give a good home to a rose-breasted cockatoo. Now, parrots like this are a huge, huge commitment. This is probably the most stressful purchase with pets that I've ever made, or even, adoption. Basically, just deciding to get this pet was one of the hardest decisions out of all of the pets that I have. So let's kind of go over why that is. Now, these are a huge commitment because these birds typically are going to live about 70 years. So it's a bird that you're going to have for a very long time. Hopefully, I have this bird my entire life. So you have to be able to commit to a parrot for, the rest of your life or its life. Basically, either until it dies or until you die, kind of a thing. Barry is so bonded to me that if I were to give him away, it would cause severe emotional trauma to him. And that emotional trauma would come out in physical ailments. Parrots form huge bonds with their owners, and so basically if you give them away, it's like putting a 7-year-old child up for adoption, and they can understand enough to know that you're giving them away, that you don't want them anymore, but they won't understand enough to understand why. So even if you do have a good reason, like let's say your health suddenly declined, or you became homeless or something like that, God forbid that ever happens, but they wouldn't understand why you're giving them away. And then to make it worse, usually when people do rehome parrots, it's something like, oh, it took up too much of my time, he was too loud, I didn't want to keep cleaning up after him. And so this is just a huge commitment. Once you decide to get them, you can't just be like, oh, I don't want them anymore after a few months or even a few years. Now, that's why I don't recommend parrots for children, because is it really possible for a child to make, a 30 or more year commitment to a pet? I don't really think that that's a very realistic expectation. So that's one of the reasons that I don't recommend them, because there are smaller parrots or just other parrots that aren't going to live as long. But in general, most parrots are going to live over 30 years if well cared for. But the lifespan to me is, I think, one of the best things about this pet, and I wish that some of my other pets also had that lifespan. I think it's so cool that I can possibly have this pet my whole life. I think that's really amazing. Now, it is actually getting very loud in here because I think the other parrots are a little bit jealous that Barry's out right now. They usually are all out together, so I'm probably gonna have to voice over the rest of this video. The next thing to think about is the emotional commitment to a cockatoo. Rose-breasted cockatoos are very intelligent and very time demanding. When I decided to get Barry, I was already working from home, and it took me a while to decide if I really could give him the attention he would need. These birds need a lot of attention, and they need to be let out of the cage for several hours every day. They also need to be able to see you most of the time, so his cage was in the room that I would spend the most time in. For someone that works long shifts, that goes to school, or is just out of the house most of the time, I would absolutely say that this is not the right pet to get. And Barry is the pet that I have the most stress about leaving when I go out of town. I can set it up so that he is happy and entertained so that I can leave for a week or so at a time, a few times out of the year. But overall, he does need a lot of my attention on a daily basis. He handles me going out of town because I provide him with the interaction that he needs all the other days out of the year. Another thing to think about is the emotions of a parrot. Parrots can be easily stressed, they can be hormonal, they can have mood swings, and all of those things need to be dealt with because their emotional distress will come out in physical harm to their bodies. And because of all of these moods that they experience, they bite. I feel lucky to say that Barry will not actually bite me to hurt me, but he does bite, and he could do it a lot harder. Not everyone is that fortunate, and parrots can give you a pretty nasty bite. But that's just the way it is. I always tell people the only way to stop a parrot from biting is to not have one. Now, of course, there are ways to modify behavior and show them that certain behaviors are unacceptable, but there will always be times where they will still bite. It's not like having a dog. People will have dogs their whole life that will never once try to bite or even threaten to bite. But parrots are not like that. Another thing with their emotions is that if too stressed or hormonal, or not given the correct care, they will get sick or start to pluck feathers. Have you seen parrots with bald spots, bald chests? They pull out their feathers because they are unhappy. The most stressful thing about this is that it is not something that only happens to bad owners. This can happen for many different reasons, and even to people who are trying very hard to take care of their parrot. For example, someone I know who takes great care of his birds got a second parrot, and the first parrot pulled out all of his feathers. It's just something that's very hard to control. With Barry, he does get stressed out sometimes, and that gives me a lot of stress too. The last 2 months have been stressful for him because I needed to replace the perches in his cage. Rope perches are safe for parrots as long as they are replaced when they wear out. And he really likes his, so I bought new ones for him, the exact same as the old ones, and I've been trying to get them into his cage, but it stresses him out so much. So it's been weeks now of trying to get him used to the new ones, and it's just so stressful. So that's an example of something that should be really easy and simple, and yet it's not. And then let's talk about the noise level. Personally, I think that rose-breasted cockatoos are not very loud birds. Barry's actually very quiet most of the day, unless I'm talking, of course. It's typical for them to be noisy 2 times out of the day, morning and evening, which also happens to be the time of the day when Jaime is usually home. He's usually out at work during the day when Barry is actually really quiet, so I don't think he believes me when I say that. But during those times of the day, he can get very noisy. He's just very happy and excited and expresses all of that with a lot of noise. So it's not a bad thing, and it's not something that you can or should teach them not to do. You just have to tolerate your head and ears hurting sometimes. I actually think it's really cool when he gets excited. Some nights he gets so excited that he will just fly around the house back and forth, singing and doing weird things like hanging upside down from things and just screaming his head off. I've been knocked in the face with wings during this, but it's really cool. His form of expression makes me feel really happy, and even though it's loud, he will actually make up some very cute little tunes. As far as food goes, he is a bit of a pain to feed. Companion parrots cannot be fed a seed diet. So if you have a parrot and you are feeding them seeds, please do some research. Look through my parrot playlist. Someone right now will be asking in the comments, can you do a video about feeding such and such parrot? Even though I am always saying that all that information is in my playlist. I have made videos about parrot food, showing how I make chop, and I also have tons of recipes on Instagram. Barry is very picky, and his food has to be finely chopped or he will throw it out of his cage. To have a bird like this, you need to be willing to spend a lot of time on meal preps. And then sometimes I'll throw sunflower seeds out on the floor for him and he'll run around foraging. It's pretty cute. He does spend a lot of time running around on the floor. He has his flight feathers, but he likes to walk too. And I use a baby gate for the dog sometimes, and well, obviously he could fly over it to the next room, but instead he will walk across the floor. He gets to the baby gate, then climbs up the baby gate with his feet and beak, and then climbs down the other side and keeps walking. He can be very entertaining to watch. And then let's talk about the mess. In his cage, he isn't very messy. Birds are messy in general, but I've noticed that smaller birds are messier. Larger birds, I think, are less messy. He does still have feathers and poop and dust, but it mainly stays contained to his cage. But out of his cage, he can be very messy, kind of like a cat. He will knock over glasses and bowls, and he will also pull out the trays from the other cages. And if it wasn't recently cleaned, then there will just be stuff everywhere. And birds poop. Surprising, I know. But I get asked, well, I want a parrot, but like, will it poop everywhere if I let it out? Yes, it will poop everywhere. That's just part of owning a bird. If you don't want to deal with that, then don't get a bird. When Barry is out of his cage, sometimes he is content to entertain himself, and sometimes he demands attention. And I'll be typing at the computer, and he'll go over and stick his head under my hands until I pay attention to him. Those rose-breasted cockatoos are very affectionate birds. They love to cuddle and be pet and kissed until you do it wrong, and then they bite you. But overall, very loving. But then sometimes when he's entertaining himself, I find that he is destroying something in the house. They can be very destructive to furniture and other things. I have to watch him with cables, and well, he also broke our thermostat. There's also a cost to maintaining a large parrot like this. You have to buy toys, new perches regularly, good quality human grade food, replace things that he's broken. Barry needs to also have his toenails trimmed often. But he's so cute and, like I said, so affectionate. Every night I tell him goodnight, give him a kiss, and he does this little tune, and it's the same sounds every single night. So I know that to him, he's also telling me goodnight. Barry is by far one of the most amazing animals that I own. He's just so beautiful and just so funny, so full of personality. But I would never say that he is easy to care for. And I know that he gets a lot of attention because he is so pretty, but it's a huge commitment. So I think that that's what people need to think about if they are thinking about getting a rose-breasted cockatoo. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed learning more about Barry. And don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.